WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. To some, the story of the Packard Plant mirrors that of Detroit. Built in the early 1900s, the building was a major site of auto manufacturing in the city. That was until the mid-1950s when the plant closed. But that didn't spell the end for the Packard Plant. The building continued to house industrial and commercial tenants into the 90s. And it was even home to some legendary Detroit raves. After a 2022 court order, large parts of the Packard Plant were demolished. What's left are massive concrete frames and outer shells. No windows, no interiors, no machinery. Just structure. The site isn't really a factory anymore. It's a ruin. And now two developers say they want to give that ruin a new life. Here's Mayor-elect Mary Sheffield speaking about what that means for Detroit.
For a decade, the Packard Plant stood as one of the city's most visible reminders of disinvestment and decline. But today we declare collectively that those days are over.
So what are the plans for the redeveloped plant? And what will it take to make those changes happen? To discuss that now, we have Mark Bennett and Oren Goldenberg here, the two local developers of this redevelopment. Mark, Oren, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, so there's a lot in your plans to redevelop the Packard Plant, but before we get into them, I want to know, Oren, why did you all want to redevelop the plant?
Well, it all started with Dream Detroit, project I've been working on the last 7 years. At the grand opening in September of 2024, it was actually Mayor Duggan who suggested that we look at this opportunity. So we began working with him and the DGC around this time last year to see if it was something we should take on.
I'm wondering how Mayor Duggan framed it to you. How did he describe the Packard Plant and this as being a big redevelopment opportunity?
Well, he saw what we did at the original Lincoln Motor Factory. And for those unfamiliar with Dream Detroit, it's been the redevelopment of the Lincoln Motor facility that was originally built in 1917, home to Recycle Here and the Lincoln Street Art Park. And in 2017, it needed a tremendous amount of repair. And me and my partner, Matthew Naimi, started working towards that goal. And through affordable housing and indoor event space and different commercial entities and 81 affordable make-live units, we were able to reopen in 2023.
Was this always a dream of yours, Oren?
No. I'm trained as a filmmaker. This really came about primarily through my work that began at the Downtown Synagogue in 2008 and being a part of the revitalization that's happened there. And then my friendship that I formed with Matt and others at Recycle Here earlier in the 20-teens, and really thinking that when the city shut down the place where we all convened, that it was worth trying to figure out how to stay there.
But it sounds like there is a direct correlation here between you being a filmmaker and now a part of this redevelopment, because as a filmmaker, you are compelled to see things in a different kind of way. It's part of that cinematic eye that you have. No?
I'm not sure I see it like that, but I appreciate what you're saying. For me, it became more about, working with the group to come up with a vision that would work, and then really the diligent, gritty work that brings it to life, from creating a budget and finding investors and taking multiple trades through a really complicated process, and then being able to finish and open and present. It's very similar to filmmaking in that sense.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, at least as well, maybe cinematic was the wrong word there in terms of describing your vision, but it seems like filmmaking in the same way that journalism does, it pushes you to be a lot more observant of the world around you. So perhaps there's a parallel. Mark.
Well, I actually
ahead.
think there's something really interesting in that. My work largely came out of documentary, and similar with Packard and Dream Detroit, it's not necessarily my vision. It's seeing, what the seeds are that are there and other people's visions, and really working towards helping bring those to light. Matthew Naimi started Recycle Here and the Art Park, and that's what drew me to want to work with him, and felt that what was going on Holden Street was worth, bringing into the future.
Okay, so in that way, we can draw a bit of a direct line then between filmmaking and this redevelopment. Mark, I want to bring you into the conversation. There's a lot included in this redevelopment. There's housing units, an indoor skate park, a future hub for manufacturing, and my favorite, a museum dedicated to Detroit's electronic music scene. I got into raving post Packard Plant rave days, and I would always hear about how legendary they were. And so this struck a special chord with me. Why did you want to combine all of these things into one project?
Sure. So on the rave issue, by the way, Oren's the pro there, so we'll go back to him later. Okay. But let's talk about the context that the mayor brought us into. So the demolition was largely complete, except the mayor committed to preserving these final two buildings. To his credit, history is important in the city.
Yeah.
So we first sat down with the mayor over a year ago. He said, okay, guys, let's look at these buildings. What do you want to do? And having been through the Dream Tour experience and learning from what Oren did, we said, well, Mr. Mayor, this doesn't make sense. We can't do just this historic building. The financing doesn't work. It just won't line up with traditional financing. So we said, but you've got all that vacant land. So if we can combine the vacant land with some new modern industrial and lots of jobs that can attract investment, we could take some of that investment and move it over to support the existing building. So we have what we call a public-private philanthropic approach, where these multiple uses are sufficient to attract capital to make the whole deal work in combination.
Now I have to go back to Oren here on the the subject of raves. What do you have to say about that? Were you one of the lucky ones who went to some of those historic raves at the Packard Plant, which were obviously dangerous for many reasons, including all of the asbestos-riddled air that folks were breathing in?
I absolutely was not, but I remember seeing my friends who did come back to English class the next morning and hearing stories about it. I actually didn't get into electronic music and the dance scene around it intensely till maybe 2013, 2014. And a lot of it was focused around the free dance parties we were doing at the downtown synagogue in an effort to revitalize there. But, I ran into Adriel Thornton last year, and we were talking about the anniversary of Detroit Electronic Music Festival, and just the idea around free raves and free parties and how essential that is. And he began to tell me about his vision to do the Museum of Detroit Electronic Music. And that's when I chose, even though we weren't really speaking about it to anyone at the time, to bring him in to the option and sort of the possibility that we were looking at of developing the Packard. And so we've been working together to see if Modem can be at home at the Packard Plant, because I think honoring that legacy is really important.
Yeah, I think that this is a much more palatable plan to folks because of that cultural component. I drive by what remains of the Packard Plant a lot, and I feel those ghosts. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Mark?
Because I was saying before we came in, the city went out to a broad RFP, and basically the responses were, great, Mr. Mayor, let's tear it all down. Okay? And that's when he said no. So to his credit, and now Mayor-elect Sheffield, they are protecting the historic integrity of the site. It's really the city's development. We're the development team, the partnership team, but this is much bigger than Oren and I. We look at ourselves as sort of stewards of this to find the right mix of uses, the old, the new, the job creation, what works best for the community. And that's what we're in the middle of right now.
Well, the city says that the potential costs, they're still being determined, but they'll likely exceed $50 million. So, Mark, how did you know that you could financially make this project feasible?
Well, frankly, you don't until you get into it. Okay, I mean that's what it's like movie making, right?
Yeah.
You get some seed money. Oren and I have committed capital. We've got others that have committed early capital, but you need to sort of build the story to attract the capital, and that's where the risk is, right? So you get moving with the city, and now we're at the point where we're much more comfortable in attracting the capital. It's been a year, and this support we've gotten more recently from the city is really giving us increasing comfort that we can pull this whole thing off.
I think about the area, too, around what remains of the Packard plant and how much that area could change for the better. It feels very desolate there right now. Right. It feels very rundown. It feels very quiet and sad.
And in fact, that's the opportunity because it's almost like a blank slate. You've got a lot of vacant land, but you have incredible emotional commitments. We've been getting emails from people whose grandparents worked there 75 years ago.
Send me some of those emails. I want to bring one of those people onto the show.
Happily, we do. And then people that went to work with their grandparents or parents, whatever it was. So this is, having this broader slate of land that's quite vacant, but incredible access to the freeway, to the Gordie Howe Bridge, we're 10 minutes away, to Midtown about 7 minutes. So it's very strategically positioned, but the key is that there's a proper balance in terms of the community feeling their sense of ownership, the business community to provide the necessary capital. And in the end, we think we can pull off something very interesting here.
This is The Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guests are Mark Bennett and Oren Goldenberg, the team behind the transformation of Detroit's historic Packard plant. Now, Mark, a previous developer tried to redevelop the Packard plant into a place for offices and events, an art gallery, a hostel or hotel, and a place for recreation, including potentially a techno club. So what went wrong with that development?
I think it was too grand. Okay, and it was also a time, think about when that happened. That was around the bankruptcy time, right? And the city was sort of reeling, and someone came from out of town with this really grand vision. And sometimes grand visions sort of never get off of dead center because they're too bold, right? Especially from a financing perspective. So we've learned from that experience, and I've done this in other scenarios where you take more of a methodical, practical approach that may not be the grand vision, but at least is a good step towards that. And that's what we feel we've done today. And I mean, really important part of this is the equitable development approach. And I think that's a core theme because you talked about the neighborhood and all that. Yeah. So finding something that, again, balances the needs of the community and can attract the appropriate capital we think is critical. And maybe that plan didn't do that.
Oren, I want to bring you back into the conversation here. You want to build an almost 400,000 square foot building for some kind of manufacturing project. Some kind. What kind of company are you hoping to attract to work out of that development?
So the most important factor in what will occupy that space is the amount of jobs it's going to bring to the city, because that's really what's essential to both the history of that place that once had 40,000 people working there at one time, but also what the city needs and is hoping that land will achieve. So we're working closely with Signature Associates on attracting, tier one manufacturing. There will be no toxic or noxious manufacturing happening there, but there's automotive and all sorts of different uses that we're exploring.
Yeah, I mean, job creation is really hard to achieve. So you're thinking automotive could be potentially one. I'm wondering if the tech sector is another one that you're eyeing.
I'll kick that to Mark. I'm really not. Sure. I'm more on the cultural side of things. Sure. I'll be honest.
You're the dreamer here.
Yeah, sure. So the broad bucket is modern high-tech manufacturing, right? Okay. Which includes not just automotive. There's a lot of defense activity going on in the state right now that are higher-paying jobs. There's even some food-related activities that may make some sense here as long as they're appropriately job-focused.
Can you give me some examples?
Well, we're very close to Eastern Market.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And by the way, in terms of the catalytic impact of this, we've had people who own property like a mile or two south on Bellevue who are all excited about what's happening. And it's positively impacting them. So again, we're in that sort of Eastern Market corridor. So the Signature folks have identified some uses that, again, if they meet the criteria for jobs and so forth. And also the right jobs can attract a lot of capital from the state in terms of incentives, which makes the whole deal quite more beneficial.
Okay. So we're talking about a space here that is going to be both public and private, which makes it special and unique. What are you going to do to try to make it accessible for all people, not just people with means or folks who live at the renovated plant? And I will turn this back over to Oren here, who is pretty in touch with what it means to preserve culture here in Detroit.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we're really looking forward to getting into the community that exists around this former site and hearing from them. We're just beginning that outreach, which we're excited about. But a main focus of the development is to anchor it as a place that people want to be, people of all ages and demographics. And right now we're working with Community Push to build indoor skate park that's really run by the community. We're hoping that it can be free and accessible, and spill out into a plaza that is available for anyone who wants to be there. So when we envision this building, it's not enclosed and away from the public. It's open and inviting, and there's things for everybody to do there.
Okay, Oren, so you're acknowledging the vital role of third spaces and the fact that we need more of those in Detroit. And a third space is somewhere where community members can convene without spending money. Some folks would point to coffee shops, for example, as, that's kind of a third space, but in a way, it doesn't necessarily feel like a third space to a lot of folks because there is that pressure to buy, to consume. So talk a little bit about why creating a third space or multiple third spaces in somewhere as historic as the Packard Plant, why that can be a really significant step for the city.
Well, I'll say that, my history in development has always focused around a third space. Our synagogue, the Downtown Synagogue, is free. We don't have membership dues, and that's been an ongoing mission for us for many years. The Lincoln Street Art Park at Dream Detroit is free and open, and we envision a big piece of the Packard to do that as well. And it's important because, that's where I believe people truly get to know different people and where social justice can really flourish because you're just around people not like you. You're not being defined by your socioeconomic bracket, which can be really uplifting and really bring peace to communities.
Mark, now the question is, when do you hope to open the redeveloped Packard Plant? What are the final hurdles here? Where exactly are you at in this process?
Sure. We're not focusing on firm end dates yet. You'll be the first to know when we are. I
hope so.
But we're focusing on near-term achievable dates. Yeah. Okay, so we're very involved with the city right now in working through the entitlement process and the community discussions. The dates that we're focusing on right now are actual formal construction in early 27, so about a year from now. It takes typically in Detroit at least 2 years from conception to being able to break ground. So we've been at this for a year. We've got another year to get through all the approvals with the city and finalize everything. So that's the start date we're throwing out. The construction activity varies because the industrial ground up takes less time than the redevelopment of the existing building. So, what we're throwing out there is a roughly 2 to 2.5 year overall construction period and probably some rolling deliveries between the two buildings.
We're seeing so much redevelopment energy here in Detroit, Mark, and this has me wondering where a project like this fits in with other developments, other projects we're seeing, like at Michigan Central and the Hudson Building and the redevelopment of the Renaissance Center.
So I think the core distinction here, Robyn, is most of that development, I've been involved in a lot of it, is all the 7.2 downtown. This is a major, and I think we can definitely call this a neighborhood, okay? Yeah. Away from the downtown, you talked about being isolated. So this expands the mission. I think a lot of people in the city feel like there's been too much focus downtown. There's been a fair amount of neighborhood activity, but not at this scale, right? There's been people doing some affordable housing. I'm involved in a lot of that. But something of this scale, this catalytic in terms of helping a community, I think that's the major difference. in terms of what we're doing.
So then do you see this as being a catalyst for more of this kind of large-scale neighborhood development?
Yes. We've got a running start here because of the uniqueness of the Packard Plant. We've talked about all the emotional history and all this, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just a piece of land. Large swaths of the city are vacant. The land bank owns over 60,000 properties. So you can't just sort of show up anywhere and with a bunch of land and do something. So we have something unique here because of the history that we're talking about and this blend we're doing in terms of old and new. It's a little more difficult just going out anywhere in the city and plopping down, something of this nature. Not that it can't be done, it's just more difficult.
At the risk of sounding a little woo-woo here, I'm going to ask Mark and Oren both, what do you feel when you're on site at the Packard Plant?
So I was on site this morning. I drove in. I mean,
you felt cold?
Well, I was in the car. But there is major activity going on right now in terms of foundation removal. If you drive by, there was 6 or 7 major shovel trucks and dump trucks. So I feel energized by the activity, and then I'm able to be a part of it. Again, I've done a lot of development deals, and this is not just another deal. It's much bigger than myself and Oren and I. That's what gets me motivated.
Oren, what about you?
I just truly feel the magnitude of both the site and our city, what was and what will be.
What was and what will be. Oren Goldenberg and Mark Bennett, the 2 developers for the redevelopment of Detroit's historic Packard Plant. Thank you both for joining me on the Metro.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's the Metro on WDET. Coming up, today is the last day to sign up for health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. We'll hear about why health insurance costs are expected to skyrocket, even for those who sign up. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay with us.